I sat in my living room, perfectly calm, when Bradley walked through the door. He expected tears, panic, maybe even hysteria. Instead, I was sipping chamomile tea from my favorite blue mug, the one his father gave me 20 years ago. My son froze in the doorway, his confident stride faltering. I looked up at him with steady eyes and said quietly, "I know everything, dear, about the money you transferred from my account into Courtney's account, about your cruel joke, wondering what my face would look like when I discovered I was broke." His smug expression cracked like thin ice. "Let me take you back 6 months, to when I still believed my son was the man I raised him to be. My name is Dusty. I am 67 years old, a widow for 8 years now since my husband Frank passed away from a sudden heart attack while mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning in July. One moment he was there, the next he was gone. Just like that, my world changed forever. I spent 35 years working as a school librarian in Portland, Oregon. I loved that job more than I can say. The smell of books, the quiet rustle of pages, the excited faces of children discovering stories that would stay with them forever. I retired 3 years ago, ready to enjoy the fruits of decades of careful saving and modest living. Frank and I never lived extravagantly. We drove sensible cars, took one vacation a year, usually camping in the mountains or visiting the coast. We saved steadily, knowing that someday we would need that cushion. Bradley is my only child. He is 34 years old now, married for 4 years to a woman named Courtney. When Frank died, Bradley was just 26. Fresh out of college with a business degree, I had worked extra shifts at the library to help pay for. I took on cataloging projects during summers, worked at a bookstore on weekends, did everything I could to make sure my boy would not graduate with crushing debt. After Frank's death, Bradley stepped up. He called me every day that first year. He came over on weekends to fix things around the house, to mow the lawn I could not bear to look at, to just sit with me while I cried. He held my hand at the funeral. He sorted through his father's belongings when I could not. He was my rock, my anchor in a storm that threatened to pull me under. We were close, Bradley and I. Maybe too close, some people said. But what did they know about loss? What did they know about being a widow raising a young man alone, about the bond that forms when it is just the two of you against the world? I was so proud of him. He went into real estate, started his own small firm, seemed to be doing well. He bought a nice townhouse in Beaverton, drove a decent car, dressed professionally. 4 years ago, he married Courtney. I will be honest. I had reservations from the start, but I kept them to myself. What mother does not have reservations about the woman who marries her son? Courtney was pretty enough, blonde and carefully put together, always dressed like she was going somewhere important, even when she was just running errands. She worked as a dental hygienist. She was polite to me, but there was a distance there, a coolness I tried not to take personally. I told myself it was normal, that daughters-in-law and mothers-in-law always had to find their footing. 3 years ago, I made a big decision. The house in Portland, the house where Frank and I raised Bradley, where we celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where we built a lifetime of memories, it was too big for me alone. Too many rooms, too many echoes, too much yard to maintain. I sold it. The market was good, and I got $280,000 for it. After paying off the small remaining mortgage and covering the moving costs, I had about $220,000 left. I moved to a smaller condo in Bend, Oregon. I had always loved Bend. Frank and I used to drive over the mountains for long weekends, hiking the trails, browsing the shops downtown, eating at little cafes. It felt like a fresh start, a place where I could build a new life without Frank's ghost around every corner. The condo was perfect. 2 bedrooms, 900 square feet, a little balcony where I could have my morning coffee and watch the sun rise over the Cascade Mountains. It cost me $60,000, leaving me with $160,000 in savings, plus my monthly retirement income and Social Security. Bradley visited often that first year. After I moved, he drove the 3.5 hours from Beaverton at least twice a month, sometimes bringing Courtney, sometimes coming alone. We would have lunch at my place or go out to one of the restaurants downtown. He seemed genuinely interested in my new life, asking about the friends I was making, the book club I joined, the volunteer work I was doing at the local library. About a year ago, Bradley and Courtney started talking about buying their dream house. Real estate prices were climbing, and they wanted to get in before they were completely priced out. Bradley mentioned that they were looking at houses in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, but they were struggling to save enough for a 20% down payment. The way he talked about it, I could hear the longing in his voice, the same tone he had used as a child when he wanted something badly. I told him I wanted to help. I said I would give them $50,000 toward their down payment. It was a gift, I said, not a loan. I had more than enough for my own needs, and what was the point of having money if I could not use it to help my only child achieve his dreams? Bradley hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. He said I was the best mother in the world. Courtney thanked me politely, but I noticed she did not seem as enthusiastic. I brushed it off. That was 6 months ago. That was when everything started to change, though I did not see it at the time. I was too busy feeling good about being able to help, too wrapped up in the warm glow of being a generous mother, too blind to see what was really happening. My neighbor, Helen, a sharp woman in her early 70s who lived 2 doors down, became my closest friend in Bend. She had been widowed for 15 years and had 3 grown children scattered across the country. We had coffee together most mornings, walked around the neighborhood in the evenings, watched old movies on Friday nights. Helen had a way of seeing through nonsense, a directness I appreciated even when it made me uncomfortable. It was Helen who first noticed something was off. She mentioned that Bradley seemed overly interested in my finances whenever he visited. She said she had overheard him asking me detailed questions about my bank accounts, about where I kept my important documents, about whether I had a will. I laughed it off. He is just being responsible, I said. He is worried about me living alone, about making sure everything is in order. Helen gave me a look I could not quite read and said, "Maybe. Just be careful, Dusty." I should have listened to Helen. But mothers are not always good at listening when it comes to their children. We want to believe the best. We want to think that all those years of bedtime stories and bandaged knees and patient homework help added up to something good, something solid, something that could not be broken. I was wrong. 3 months before everything fell apart, Bradley's behavior started to shift in ways I told myself were innocent, but that left me feeling uneasy in a way I could not quite name. He became intensely interested in the mechanics of my finances, not just the big picture, not just knowing I was comfortable, but the details. Which bank did I use? Did I do online banking? Had I set up automatic bill payments? Did I keep my passwords written down somewhere? And if so, where? The questions came casually, woven into normal conversation, but there were so many of them. One afternoon in early spring, Bradley showed up unexpectedly. I was not home. I had gone to my book club meeting at the library. When I returned 2 hours later, he was sitting in his car in the parking lot. He said he had been in Bend for a work appointment and thought he would stop by, but when I was not home, he decided to wait. It seemed reasonable enough, but something about it felt off. Why had he not called first? Why wait in the parking lot instead of leaving a note? The next visit, he offered to help me organize my finances. He said that older people, he actually used those words, older people, often got confused by modern banking systems, by online passwords, by automatic payments. He said he wanted to make sure I did not accidentally miss a payment or get scammed by one of those emails pretending to be from the bank. His concern seemed genuine. His tone was patient, even loving. I felt a flash of irritation at being called an older person who might get confused, but I swallowed it. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being sensitive. Technology did move fast, and I had grown up in a world of paper checkbooks and bank tellers who knew your name. I let him sit down at my laptop and help me set up automatic payments for my utilities, my condo fees, my insurance premiums. He spent a long time on that laptop, much longer than seemed necessary for setting up a few automatic payments. He said he was optimizing my settings, making sure my browser was secure, checking for viruses. I made us sandwiches and brought him iced tea while he worked. When he finally finished, he gave me a hug and said, "There, now you are all set, Mom. You do not have to worry about anything." But after he left, I noticed things. My desktop icons had been rearranged. Some files seemed to have been moved. When I opened my browser, my banking website was bookmarked, which it had not been before. I told myself Bradley had probably just bookmarked it for convenience, to make it easier for me to check my accounts. Then Courtney started calling me. This was unusual. In 4 years of marriage to my son, Courtney had rarely initiated contact with me. Our relationship was cordial but distant. Suddenly, she was inviting me to lunch, asking about my day, inquiring about my health. She asked detailed questions about my retirement, about whether I had thought about long-term care insurance, about what I would do if I ever needed assisted living. The questions felt intrusive, but I tried to be gracious. Maybe she was finally trying to build a relationship with me. Maybe she was growing up, thinking more about the future. During one of those lunch dates, Courtney steered the conversation to inheritance. She said she and Bradley had been updating their own wills and wondered if I had done the same recently. She said it was important to have everything in order, to make sure your wishes were clear, to avoid family conflict after you were gone. After I was gone. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. I was 67 and healthy. I went for walks every day. My doctor said I had the blood pressure of a woman 20 years younger. Why was my daughter-in-law talking about me being gone? I came home from that lunch feeling shaken. When I mentioned it to Helen, she frowned deeply. "That is not normal, Dusty," she said. "People do not talk about inheritance with their in-laws unless they are thinking about it, unless they are planning for it." I defended Courtney. I said she was probably just being practical, just trying to be responsible. Helen looked at me with pity and said, "If you say so." 2 weeks later, I caught Bradley in my condo when I was not supposed to be there. I had gone to a dental appointment, but it was canceled at the last minute because the dentist had a family emergency. I came home an hour earlier than expected. Bradley's car was in the parking lot. When I opened my door, I found him in my bedroom, standing at my dresser with his phone out. He was taking pictures of something. When he heard me, he jumped and quickly put his phone in his pocket. "What are you doing here?" I asked. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Bradley smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Oh, Mom, you startled me. I came by to check on that weird noise you mentioned last week, the one coming from your heating vent. I let myself in with the spare key you gave me. I was just texting Courtney to let her know I was here." I had not given Bradley my spare key recently. The last time he had it was over a year ago, and I had asked for it back. Had he made a copy? And I had not mentioned any weird noise from a heating vent. I started to say so, but Bradley was already moving past me, heading for the door, saying he had to get going. He had an appointment to get to. He kissed my cheek and left before I could fully process what had happened. That night, I checked my dresser. I kept some of my important documents in the top drawer. My social security card, my bank statements, the deed to my condo, Frank's life insurance papers. Everything seemed to be there. but I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The following week, I received a call from my bank. It was a security alert. There had been unusual login attempts on my account from an unrecognized device. Had I tried to log in from a computer I did not normally use? I said no. The bank representative suggested I change my password immediately, which I did. When I mentioned this to Bradley on our next phone call, he sounded concerned. He said scammers were everywhere these days, that I needed to be more careful, that I should never write down my passwords where someone could find them. But I had not written down my passwords. They were stored in my head. Or at least they had been. Until Bradley helped me set up my online banking and insisted I save them in the browser for convenience. Small amounts of money started disappearing from my checking account. $50, then $75, then $62. At first, I thought I was misremembering what I had spent. Maybe I had bought something and forgotten about it. Maybe I had withdrawn cash and not recorded it in my check register. But it kept happening. Every week or two, another small amount would be gone. I went to the bank in person. I spoke with a teller named Jessica, who had helped me several times before. I explained what was happening. She pulled up my account and frowned at the screen. She showed me a series of transfers marked as person-to-person payments through the bank's app. I did not use that app. I barely knew how apps worked. Jessica suggested I might want to speak with the bank manager about securing my account. Before I could make that appointment, Bradley called me. He said he had been thinking about my situation, about me living alone, about what would happen if I got sick or had an emergency. He said he wanted to add himself as a joint account holder on my savings account, just for emergencies, he said, just so he could help me if something happened. It would give him peace of mind, he said. It would make things easier. Everything in me screamed, no. But then Bradley said, "Mom, do you not trust me? After everything we have been through? After all I have done for you?" His voice held hurt, disappointment, a tremor that made me feel like a terrible mother for even hesitating. Against my better judgment, against the small voice in my head that sounded suspiciously like Helen, I agreed. We went to the bank together. Bradley filled out the paperwork. The banker processed it. Just like that, my son had full access to my life savings. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling a dread I could not name. At 2 a.m, I got up and checked my bank account online. Everything was still there. $162,418. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself Bradley was my son, that he loved me, that he would never hurt me. I was lying to myself. And somewhere deep down, I knew it. 6 weeks before the theft, the trickle of missing money became a flood, and my son's mask began to slip in ways I could no longer ignore or explain away. I noticed a withdrawal of $500 from my account. Then, 3 days later, $800. These were not small amounts I could rationalize or forget. I called Bradley immediately. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice distracted. When I asked about the withdrawals, there was a pause. Then he laughed. But it was not a warm laugh. It was dismissive. "Mom, seriously? You are asking me about this? I am on the account. I needed to borrow a little money for a business expense. I will pay you back next month." His tone had an edge I had never heard before, impatient and condescending. "But you did not ask me," I said. "You just took it." "I should not have to ask permission," Bradley snapped. "That is the whole point of being a joint account holder. Do you not trust me? Are you really going to interrogate your own son about every little thing?" $1,300 is not a little thing, I said quietly. He hung up on me. Just ended the call. I sat there holding my phone, staring at it like it was a foreign object. My son had never hung up on me in his life. 2 days later, Courtney called. Her voice was sugary sweet, the way people sound when they are pretending to be nice. She said Bradley had told her about our conversation, and she was concerned about me. She said that sometimes, when people got older, they became confused about their finances. She suggested I might be experiencing early signs of dementia. She said her grandmother had started getting paranoid about money right before she was diagnosed. She said I should consider seeing a doctor, maybe getting some tests done. I am not confused, I said, my voice tight. I know exactly what is happening. Courtney's tone changed, became harder. Well, Bradley is your son. He has every right to access an account that has his name on it. If you did not want him to use it, maybe you should not have added him. And honestly, Dusty, given how you are acting, maybe you should consider giving Bradley power of attorney, just in case. In case of what? I asked. In case you are not capable of making good decisions anymore, she said. Then she hung up too. I felt like I had been slapped. I called Helen, and she came over immediately. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she said, Dusty, they are stealing from you. You know that, right? This is not confused thinking. This is not paranoia. This is theft, and you need to protect yourself. But he is my son, I whispered. Helen took my hands in hers. I know, honey, and that makes it so much worse. Bradley stopped visiting for 2 weeks after that phone call. He did not return my messages. When I finally reached him, he was cold, distant, treating me like an obligation rather than his mother. The change was so stark it left me breathless. How had I not seen this coming? Had there been signs all along that I had ignored? Guilt gnawed at me. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe they were right, and I was becoming suspicious and paranoid in my old age. By the end of those 2 weeks, I was so desperate to restore peace that I called Bradley and apologized. I said I was sorry for doubting him, that I knew he would never hurt me, that I trusted him completely. He accepted my apology, but his warmth did not return. When he finally visited again, he was different, distant. He barely looked at me. He spent most of the visit on his phone. It was during that visit that I overheard something that changed everything. Bradley was standing on my balcony, talking on his phone. I was in the kitchen making coffee, and the window was open. His voice drifted in clearly. Do not worry. The old lady will not know what hit her. She is completely clueless. We just need to wait a little longer, make sure everything is in place. Then we can move it all at once. She will not know until it is too late. My hands froze on the coffee pot. The old lady, that was me. My son was calling me the old lady, talking about me like I was a mark, a target, not his mother. When he came back inside, I asked him who he was talking to. Without missing a beat, he said, a difficult client. Real estate stuff. You would not understand. Then he left, saying he had another appointment. I stood in my empty condo, feeling the walls close in. Helen's words echoed in my mind. They are stealing from you. I checked my account again that night. $1,500 had been withdrawn that afternoon, while Bradley was at my house. I called the bank first thing the next morning and asked for a complete history of my accounts for the past 3 months. They mailed it to me. When it arrived 2 days later, I spread the papers across my dining table and traced every transaction with a shaking finger. Over the past 6 weeks, Bradley had taken $43,600 from my savings account. The withdrawals were carefully spaced, never so much at once that they would trigger an automatic alert, but steady, relentless, draining me bit by bit. I felt sick, physically sick. I barely made it to the bathroom before I threw up. When Helen came over that evening, she found me sitting at the table, staring at the bank statements. She looked at the numbers and said 3 words, "Get a lawyer." But I could not move. I was frozen, paralyzed by disbelief and grief. This was my son, my baby boy. The child I had rocked to sleep, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose triumphs I had celebrated. How could he do this to me? Then I found the iPad. I had an iPad that I barely used. Bradley had set it up for me a year ago, connected it to his iCloud account so he could help me download apps and troubleshoot problems remotely. I had not opened it in weeks. When I charged it and turned it on, it synced with his messages. I saw texts between Bradley and Courtney. My hands shook as I read them. Courtney, how much more do you think we can take before she notices? Bradley, she's already noticed, but she's too weak to do anything about it. She apologized to me. Can you believe it? Courtney, LOL. Your mom always acted so superior, like she was better than everyone. This is karma. Bradley, we should have the rest by next month. Then she'll have nothing. We deserve this after everything we've put up with. Courtney, I can't wait to see her face when she finds out she's broke. Your mom always acted like she was so smart, so independent. She's going to be devastated. Bradley, she'll have to sell the condo probably. Maybe move into one of those cheap senior apartments. At least we won't have to pretend to care anymore. Courtney, thank God. I'm so tired of the act. The messages went on. There were dozens of them, going back months. They were planning this. They had been planning it all along. The kindness, the visits, the concern. It was all an act, every bit of it. I sat on my couch and cried harder than I had since Frank died. I cried for the son I thought I had. I cried for the relationship I thought we shared. I cried for my own blindness, my desperate need to believe in the goodness of my child even when the evidence screamed otherwise. When I finally stopped crying, something hardened inside me, a core of steel I did not know I possessed. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused. They thought I would just roll over and let them destroy me. They were wrong. 2 weeks before the present moment, before Bradley walked into my condo expecting to find me devastated and broken, I stopped playing the victim and started fighting back. The morning after I found those messages, I woke up with absolute clarity. I made coffee, sat at my table, and began making a list. I documented every suspicious incident, every strange question Bradley had asked, every unexplained withdrawal. I took screenshots of the messages on the iPad. I gathered every bank statement, every piece of paper that showed the systematic theft my son had committed. Then I did something I should have done weeks ago. I called an attorney. Her name was Margaret Sullivan, and she specialized in elder financial abuse. Helen had given me her number months ago, when she first started worrying about Bradley's behavior. I had tucked the business card in my wallet and tried to forget about it. Now I pulled it out with steady hands. Margaret met with me that same afternoon. She was probably in her mid-50s, with short silver hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. I spread everything out on her desk. The bank statements, the screenshots, the timeline of events. She read through it all in silence, her expression growing darker with each page. When she finished, she looked up at me. "Mrs. Carter," she said, using my married name, "this is one of the clearest cases of financial elder abuse I have seen. Your son has stolen over $40,000 from you, and based on these messages, he is planning to take more. We need to act immediately." "What can I do?" I asked. My voice sounded small. "First, we file a police report. Today. Right now. This is theft. Plain and simple. Second, we freeze your accounts and open new ones he has no access to. Third, we document everything and prepare for criminal charges, Fourth, she paused. And are you prepared for this, Mrs. Carter? Are you prepared to see your son prosecuted? I thought of those messages. I can't wait to see her face when she finds out she's broke. I thought of Courtney saying I had always acted superior, that this was karma. I thought of Bradley calling me the old lady, laughing about leaving me with nothing. Yes, I said. I am prepared. Margaret moved fast. We walked directly to the police station. Detective Raymond Harper took my statement. He was a patient man, probably in his early 40s, with kind eyes that reminded me a little of Frank. He listened to everything, took notes, examined the evidence I brought. He said he would open an investigation immediately. The next day, I went to a different bank across town. I opened a completely new account, one Bradley knew nothing about. Then I did something that felt like both a betrayal and an act of survival. I moved most of my money from the old account to the new one. I left $12,000 in the account Bradley could access. It was bait, Margaret's idea. If Bradley took it, we would have proof of recent theft, something concrete and undeniable. I also called a locksmith and had all my locks changed. I installed a security system with cameras. And on Margaret's suggestion, I bought a small hidden camera and set it up in my living room, aimed at the couch and coffee table where Bradley usually sat. Then I waited. During those 2 weeks, I pretended everything was normal. I called Bradley and asked him to visit for dinner. I made his favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes and green beans. I acted tired, a little confused, exactly the way they expected me to be. I let them think their plan was working. Bradley and Courtney came for dinner on a Friday night. I set the table with my good dishes, lit candles, poured wine. I played the role of the doting, slightly addled mother perfectly. I asked vague questions, forgot what I was saying mid-sentence, acted worried about whether I had paid my electric bill. I saw them exchange glances across the table, small, satisfied smiles. After dinner, I told them I was exhausted and needed to lie down. I said I was not sleeping well lately, that I felt confused and overwhelmed. Courtney patted my hand with false sympathy. Bradley said I should rest, that they would clean up the dishes. I thanked them and went to my bedroom, but I did not rest. Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. There was something eager in her voice, something cruel. God, I hope so. She's been such a burden. At least when she's broke, she'll have to go into some cheap nursing home, and we won't have to deal with her anymore. Bradley laughed. It was not the laugh I remembered from his childhood, not the sound of joy or love. It was cold, empty. Mom, if your account were empty, how would you look? I wish I could see her face. I wonder if she'll beg us for help. That would be rich. They both laughed then, sitting on my couch, drinking my wine, planning my destruction. Courtney leaned against Bradley's shoulder. We should take a vacation after this, she said. Somewhere expensive. We've earned it, putting up with her all these years. Bradley kissed the top of her head. Hawaii, he said. I've always wanted to go to Maui. Well, use Mom's money and drink cocktails on the beach while she figures out how to survive on Social Security. I watched this through my phone, tears streaming down my face, my hand pressed against my mouth to keep from making a sound. This was my son, my baby, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, who I had loved more than my own life. And he was destroying me without a shred of remorse, laughing about it, planning a vacation with my stolen money. The camera captured everything. Every word, every laugh, every cruel comment. When they finally left an hour later, calling out a sweet goodbye to me, I stayed in my bedroom until I heard Bradley's car drive away. Then I called Margaret. I sent her the video. She called me back within minutes. Her voice was tight with anger. "We have everything we need," she said. "Tomorrow, when he takes that money, we move." I did not sleep that night. I sat in my living room, wrapped in the blanket Frank had bought me on our last anniversary, and waited for morning. Part of me hoped Bradley would not do it. Part of me, the part that was still a mother, still wanted to believe there was something redeemable in him, something that would stop him at the last moment. But at 9:30 the next morning, my phone buzzed with a bank alert. Bradley had logged into the account remotely. He was transferring the $12,000 I had left as bait. I watched it happen in real time, watched my son steal from me without hesitation. I called Margaret. She called Detective Harper. The trap was sprung. Everything was in motion. Then I did something that might seem strange. I cleaned my condo. I vacuumed, dusted, washed the dishes. I made a pot of chamomile tea. I put on a nice blouse and my favorite earrings. I brushed my hair and put on a little lipstick. If I was going to confront my son, if I was going to watch my world burn down, I was going to do it with dignity. Margaret arrived first, then Detective Harper. They waited in my bedroom, out of sight. I texted Bradley, "Please come over. We need to talk." He responded immediately, "On my way." I sat on my couch and waited. I was surprisingly calm. The grief would come later. I knew. The full weight of this loss would crush me eventually. But in that moment, I felt something I had not felt in months. I felt powerful. I felt strong. I felt like I mattered. When I heard Bradley's key in the lock, heard him realize it did not work anymore, heard him knock, I took a deep breath. I walked to the door and opened it. His face was arranged in an expression of concern, but I could see the smugness underneath, the satisfaction. He thought he had won. He had no idea what was about to happen. Bradley stepped through my doorway with a confidence that made my stomach turn. He was already playing his part, his face arranged in what he probably thought was concern but read to me as barely concealed triumph. I gestured to the couch, the same couch where he and Courtney had laughed about my destruction just hours ago. "Sit down," I said quietly. He sat, glancing around the room like he was cataloging what would soon be out of my reach. "Mom, what's going on? Your text sounded urgent. Are you okay?" I remained standing, looking down at him. The power dynamic felt right this way. Necessary. "I am fine, Bradley. Better than fine, actually. I wanted you to come over because I have something to tell you." His expression flickered, just for a moment. Something that might have been wariness crossed his face. "Okay," he said slowly. "What's up?" "I know everything," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "I know about the $43,600 you have stolen from me over the past 3 months. I know about the $12,000 you transferred this morning. I know about every withdrawal, every secret transaction, every lie." The color drained from Bradley's face. "Mom, I don't know what you're talking about. I borrowed some money, yes, but I was going to pay it back." "You're confused." "I am not confused," I said. "I have never been more clear-headed in my life. I have bank statements documenting every theft. I have screenshots of your text messages with Courtney, planning this entire thing. I have video of you and Courtney sitting on this very couch last night, laughing about leaving me broke. That is not," he started, but I held up my hand. "Let me finish. I heard you call me the old lady. I heard you laugh about me having to sell my condo and move into a cheap nursing home. I heard Courtney say I was a burden. I heard you say," and my voice cracked here, despite my best efforts. "I heard you say you wished you could see my face when I discovered I was broke. That you would use my money for a vacation to Maui while I figured out how to survive on Social Security." Bradley stood up abruptly. Those messages were taken out of context. That video Wherever you got it, you're misunderstanding what we meant. We were joking around. We would never actually hurt you. $43,000 is not a joke, I said. Planning to steal $160,000 more is not a joke. You were not joking, Bradley. You were destroying your mother, and you were enjoying it. He tried a different approach then. His face crumpled. Tears filled his eyes. Mom, please. I made mistakes. I got in over my head with some debts. Courtney's been pressuring me. I was desperate. But I'm your son. You can't. You wouldn't actually press charges. We can work this out. I'll pay you back. I promise. Your promises mean nothing anymore, I said. And you're right about one thing. You are my son. Or you were. The boy I raised would never have done this. I don't know who you are anymore. He changed tactics again, his tears drying instantly, anger flashing in his eyes. You're really going to destroy your own son over money? After everything I did for you after Dad died? After all the time I spent helping you, supporting you? This is how you repay me? You did not help me, I said quietly. You pretended to help me so you could position yourself to steal everything I have. And yes, Bradley, I am going to hold you accountable. Because what you did was not just theft. It was betrayal. It was cruelty. And if I let you get away with it, I would be failing you one last time as a mother. That is when Margaret stepped out of my bedroom, followed by Detective Harper. Bradley's eyes went wide. He looked between them and me, understanding dawning. Bradley Carter, Detective Harper said, his voice formal and impassive. I'm arresting you on suspicion of financial elder abuse, theft, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As the detective continued reading Bradley his rights, my son's face transformed. The fear, the fake remorse, all of it fell away, replaced by pure rage. You did this, he hissed at me. You set me up. You trapped me. No, I said. You trapped yourself. I just stopped pretending I did not see it. Detective Harper put handcuffs on my son's wrists. As he did, he looked at me. Mrs. Carter, there's something else you should know. We ran Bradley's name through our system when you first filed the report. This is not the first time he's been investigated for financial crimes. What? I felt the room tilt. 3 years ago, Courtney's mother filed a report against both of them for stealing approximately $60,000 from her accounts. She was too ashamed and ultimately too afraid of losing her daughter to press charges. The case was dropped, but the file was sealed, not erased. When your case came across my desk, the name flagged in our system. My son and his wife had done this before, to Courtney's own mother, and they had gotten away with it. That was why they were so confident, so brazen. They thought I would be too ashamed, too afraid, too weak to stop them. There's more, Detective Harper continued. Based on the evidence you provided and the search warrant we executed this morning on Bradley's business records, we've uncovered a pattern of fraud targeting elderly clients. Over the past 2 years, Bradley has taken real estate investment deposits from at least 6 older clients, promising to purchase properties on their behalf. He never purchased any properties. He pocketed the money. We're looking at total theft of approximately $400,000 across multiple victims. I felt like I might fall down. I reached for the arm of my chair and sat heavily. My son was not just a thief who stole from his mother. He was a predator who targeted vulnerable elderly people, who built a career on exploitation and lies. The charges you're facing include wire fraud, theft, elder abuse, and identity theft, Detective Harper told Bradley. You're looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison. Bradley's face was white, his breathing rapid. He looked at me with pure hatred. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope ruining your son's life makes you feel good about yourself." Margaret stepped forward then, her voice crisp and professional. "For the record, Detective, my client would like to state that she takes no pleasure in this. She is simply holding her son accountable for his crimes. Bradley Carter ruined his own life through his choices and actions." As Detective Harper led Bradley to the door, my son turned back one more time. "You're going to regret this," he said. "When I get out, you'll have no one. You'll be alone. You'll die alone, and no one will care." "I am already alone," I said softly. "You made sure of that when you decided to betray me. At least now, I'm alone with my dignity intact." The door closed behind them. Through the window, I watched Detective Harper guide Bradley into the police car, one hand on his head as he ducked into the back seat. My son, my only child, in handcuffs. Because of choices he made, because of cruelty he embraced. My phone rang. It was Detective Harper's partner. They had arrested Courtney at her dental office. She had tried to run when the officers approached her. She had screamed that this was all a misunderstanding, that I was a vindictive old woman making up stories. But when they showed her the evidence, the videos, the bank records, she had gone silent. Margaret sat down beside me. "You did the right thing," she said gently. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did." I nodded, unable to speak, because the truth was, it felt terrible. It felt like I had just burned down my entire world. But what else could I have done? Let them destroy me? Let them steal everything and walk away laughing? Over the next few days, more details emerged. Bradley and Courtney had been planning this for over a year, since before they even mentioned wanting to buy a house. The house was real, but they had no intention of using my gift as a down payment. That money had disappeared into Courtney's personal account the day after I had offered it. They had been living well beyond their means, running up debts, gambling, taking expensive trips they posted about on social media while pretending to be struggling savers. The other victims Bradley had scammed started coming forward. An 82-year-old man who had given Bradley $60,000 to invest in a beach condo that never existed. A 76-year-old widow who had trusted Bradley with her late husband's life insurance money. A 70-year-old couple who had liquidated their retirement account, giving Bradley $85,000 for a property investment that was completely fabricated. Listening to their stories broke my heart all over again. My son had not just betrayed me. He had built a career on betraying vulnerable people, on exploiting the trust that older people wanted to have in a young, professional, seemingly kind man who reminded them of their own sons. Detective Harper told me that my willingness to come forward, to press charges despite the personal cost, had given these other victims the courage to do the same. Together, our testimonies built an overwhelming case. Bradley and Courtney's attorneys advised them to plead guilty. The sentencing hearing was 3 months after Bradley's arrest. I attended, sitting in the courtroom with Margaret beside me. Bradley wore an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood and read from a prepared statement. He said he was sorry. He said he had made terrible mistakes. He said he hoped someday his victims, especially his mother, could forgive him. His voice was flat, mechanical. I did not believe a word of it, and clearly neither did the judge. She sentenced Bradley to 12 years in federal prison. Courtney, who had been equally involved but had slightly less criminal history, received 8 years. As they were led away, Bradley looked back at me one last time. I could not read his expression. Regret? Anger? Resentment? Maybe all of it? Maybe none of it. Maybe he was incapable of genuine emotion when it came to me, when it came to anyone. I walked out of that courtroom into bright sunshine. Margaret put her hand on my shoulder. "It's over," she said. You can start rebuilding now. But standing there on the courthouse steps, I did not feel victorious. I felt hollowed out, empty. Yes, justice had been served. Yes, I had protected myself and helped other victims. But I had also lost my son, not to death, which would have been easier in some ways, but to his own choices, his own cruelty, his own darkness. Helen was waiting for me in the parking lot. She hugged me for a long time. Then she said, "Let's go home, Dusty. Let's get you home." And we did. We drove back to Bend in comfortable silence. And when we got to my condo, Helen made tea, and we sat on my balcony and watched the sun set over the mountains, and I cried for the last time over the son I had lost, and the innocence I could never get back. The weeks following the sentencing were strange and disorienting. I woke up each morning in my quiet condo and had to remind myself that it was over. Bradley was in prison. Courtney was in prison. My money, most of it anyway, had been recovered and returned to me. The legal battle was finished. I had won. But winning felt nothing like I thought it would. Helen came over every morning with coffee and bagels. She did not try to make me talk when I was not ready. She just sat with me, a steady presence, letting me process everything at my own pace. Some days we watched old movies. Some days we took long walks around the neighborhood. Some days I cried, and she held my hand and said nothing at all because there was nothing to say. Margaret called me 2 weeks after the sentencing. She had news. The court had ordered full restitution. Between the seized assets from Bradley and Courtney's accounts, the liquidation of Bradley's business, and the sale of their townhouse, I would recover approximately 98% of what they had stolen from me. The other victims would also receive significant restitution. "That is good news," I said, but my voice was flat. "It is," Margaret agreed. "And there is something else. Courtney's mother wants to speak with you. Her name is Linda. She heard about your case and what you did. She said she wishes she had been as brave as you 3 years ago." I met Linda at a coffee shop in Portland the following week. She was in her early 70s, a small woman with gray hair and sad eyes. We sat across from each other, 2 mothers who had been betrayed by their children, and she thanked me. She said that when Courtney and Bradley had stolen from her, she had felt so ashamed, so stupid, that she had not been able to bring herself to press charges. She said she had not spoken to Courtney in over a year, that her daughter had cut her off completely after the theft. "You gave me something I didn't have," Linda said. "Validation, proof that I wasn't crazy, that what they did to me was real and wrong. Thank you for being strong enough to fight." We cried together in that coffee shop. Then we exchanged phone numbers. Linda said she had a small support group of women who had been victims of financial abuse by family members, and she invited me to join. I said I would think about it. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I went to a meeting. There were 7 of us, sitting in a circle, in a church basement, sharing our stories. A woman whose daughter had forged her signature and taken out credit cards in her name. A man whose son had convinced him to invest in a fake business. A woman whose nephew had stolen her jewelry and her late husband's coin collection. A woman whose granddaughter had drained her accounts. Everyone had a story. Everyone carried the same weight of shame, grief, and bewildered loss. How could someone who was supposed to love us do this? How could family, blood, turn into predator and prey? But sitting in that circle, listening and sharing, I felt something shift. The shame started to lift. Because it was not my shame to carry. I had not done anything wrong. I had loved my son. I had raised him the best way I knew how. I had been generous and trusting. Those were not character flaws. Bradley's choices were his own, born from whatever darkness lived inside him. That darkness was not my fault. I kept going to the meetings. Every Tuesday evening, I drove to Portland and sat in that circle. Eventually, I started co-leading the group with Linda. We helped new members navigate the legal system, connected them with attorneys like Margaret, supported them through the painful process of holding their loved ones accountable. At Helen's suggestion, I also started volunteering at a senior center in Bend, teaching classes on financial literacy and fraud prevention. I shared my story, not with shame, but with purpose. If my pain could help even one person avoid the same fate, then maybe it meant something. Maybe it could be transformed into something useful. 6 months after the sentencing, I received my first letter from Bradley. It came from the federal prison in California, where he was serving his sentence. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I could bring myself to open it. Helen sat with me when I finally did. The letter was short. Bradley said he was sorry. He said prison had given him time to think, to really look at what he had done. He said he understood if I never forgave him that he did not deserve forgiveness. He said he did not expect me to write back. But he wanted me to know that he was ashamed of what he had done, that he saw it clearly now, stripped of all the justifications he had built up in his mind. I read the letter 3 times, then I put it in a drawer and did not respond. I was not ready. Maybe I would never be ready. That was okay too. More letters came over the following months. Bradley wrote to me once a month. The letters were always short, always apologetic, never demanding a response. In the 4th letter, he told me that he had started attending therapy in prison, working with a counselor who specialized in helping inmates understand their criminal behavior. He said he was learning about something called antisocial personality traits, about how he had justified hurting people by dehumanizing them, turning them into obstacles or resources rather than human beings. In the 6th letter, he wrote about Courtney. They had been housed in different facilities and were not allowed to communicate. He said that without her influence, he was starting to see how toxic their relationship had been, how they had encouraged the worst in each other, how they had created a bubble where cruelty felt like cleverness and theft felt like taking what they deserved. I kept the letters but still did not respond. I was not ready to let him back in, even at a distance. The wound was too fresh, too deep, but something was happening to me. Slowly, painfully, I was healing. The anger that had burned so hot in the beginning was cooling into something more manageable. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe never, but a kind of acceptance. This was my story now. This had happened to me. I could not change it, but I could decide what to do with it. I started writing, not a book, just my thoughts, my feelings, the story of what happened. Helen read some of it and said it was powerful, that other people needed to hear it. She suggested I contact a local newspaper, maybe share my story more publicly. At first, I resisted. I did not want to be known as the woman whose son stole from her. I did not want pity. But then I thought about all the people in my support group, about how much it had helped to know I was not alone. I thought about the elderly victims who might never report their abuse because of shame. I thought about the Bradleys of the world, counting on that shame, counting on silence. I contacted the newspaper. A reporter came to interview me. The story ran on the front page of the local section. Bend woman prosecutes son for elder abuse, helps change Oregon law, because that was the other thing that had happened. Margaret had worked with state legislators to strengthen Oregon's laws around financial elder abuse, making penalties harsher and making it easier for victims to recover stolen assets. They called it Dust is Law, though I had not asked for that. After the article ran, my phone rang constantly. Other victims reached out. News stations wanted interviews. A woman from a national nonprofit that fought elder abuse asked me to speak at a conference. It was overwhelming, but Helen helped me navigate it all. I said yes to the things that felt right, the things that might actually help people, and no to the things that felt exploitative. A year after Bradley's sentencing, I went to visit him in prison. I did not tell anyone I was going, not even Helen. I needed to do this alone. The drive to California took 8 hours. I stayed overnight in a motel and went to the prison the next morning. They processed me through security, gave me a visitor's badge, led me to a room with tables bolted to the floor and vending machines along one wall. I sat down and waited. My heart was pounding. Then Bradley walked in, escorted by a guard. He was thinner. His hair was cut short. He looked older than his 35 years. When he saw me, he stopped walking. His eyes filled with tears. The guard gestured for him to sit down across from me. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then Bradley said, "You came." "I came," I agreed. "I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see you. Maybe I needed to know if any of it was real." "Any of what?" he asked quietly. "The remorse in your letters. The therapy. The person you're claiming to become. I need to know if it's real, or if it's just another manipulation." Bradley looked down at his hands, cuffed in front of him. "It's real, Mom. I know you have no reason to believe me. I know I destroyed your trust. But I'm telling you the truth. What I did to you, what I did to those other people, it eats at me every single day. I see your face the way it was in that courtroom, and I hate myself." "Good," I said. "You should hate yourself for what you did. But hating yourself is not the same as changing. Anyone can feel sorry after they're caught. The question is whether you would have stopped if you hadn't been caught." "No," he said simply. "I wouldn't have. I was so deep into it, so convinced that I deserved what I was taking, that I had rationalized everything. If you hadn't stopped me, I would have taken everything. I would have destroyed you completely." "At least you are honest about that," I said. "Why did you do it, Bradley?" I have asked myself this question 1,000 times. Why? Was I that terrible of a mother? Did I do something that made you hate me so much? Bradley shook his head, tears running down his face. "No, you were a good mom. That's what makes this so much worse. You didn't deserve any of it." I think that's what I'm starting to understand in therapy. It wasn't about you. It was about me, about something broken in me, about feeling entitled to things I hadn't earned, about resenting anyone who had what I wanted. Courtney and I fed off each other, made each other worse, but I can't blame her. I made my own choices. We talked for 2 hours. It was not a reconciliation. It was not forgiveness. But it was honest, in a way we had never been honest with each other. Bradley told me about his therapy, about the work he was doing to understand his behavior. He told me he was taking classes, working toward a degree in addiction counseling, hoping that maybe when he got out, he could use his experience to help other people avoid the mistakes he made. I told him about the support group, about Dusty's Law, about the speaking I was doing. I told him that I was building a new life, one that did not revolve around being his mother, and that it was painful, but also liberating. "When our time was up," Bradley said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to have a relationship when I get out. But thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me this chance to tell you the truth." I stood up. "Maybe someday," I said. "Maybe after you've served your time, after you've actually changed, maybe we can try to have some kind of relationship. But it will never be what it was. You killed that, Bradley. You killed the relationship we had, and that's something we both have to live with." "I know," he said. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom." I nodded. Then I walked out of that prison and got in my car and drove home. I cried for the first hour. Then I stopped crying and turned on music and sang along badly and felt lighter than I had in a year. 3 months after that prison visit, I stood in front of a room full of people at a conference on elder abuse. There were social workers, attorneys, law enforcement officers, policymakers, and victims. I was there to give the keynote speech about my experience and the importance of holding abusers accountable even when they are family. I was nervous. Public speaking had never been my strength, but Helen was in the front row, smiling encouragingly, and I thought about all the people who might benefit from hearing this story, and I began. I told them everything about Bradley's careful manipulation, about the systematic theft, about the cruel messages and the devastating betrayal. I told them about the shame I had felt, the guilt, the sense that maybe I had somehow caused this or deserved it. I told them about Margaret and Detective Harper, about the support group, about Linda and the other victims who had found their voices through my case. And then I told them the most important part. I told them that fighting back, that prosecuting my own son despite the personal cost, was the hardest thing I had ever done. But it was also the most necessary. Because staying silent, protecting abusers out of misplaced loyalty or shame, does not help anyone. It does not help the victim, and ultimately, it does not help the abuser either. Real love sometimes means setting boundaries, enforcing consequences, saying no even when it breaks your heart. When I finished speaking, the room was silent for a moment. Then people stood and applauded. Several people were crying. Afterward, dozens of people came up to thank me, to share their own stories, to ask for advice. A woman in her 80s gripped my hand and said, "My grandson stole from me last year. I didn't report it. But after hearing you, I think I'm going to. It's not too late, is it? It is never too late to stand up for yourself," I told her. It is never too late to demand justice. That conference marked a turning point for me. I realized that my story, as painful as it was, had power. It could help people. It could change minds. It could save someone from the same fate I had suffered. I started speaking more regularly, partnering with nonprofits, working with legislators, doing whatever I could to turn my private pain into public good. The support group I co-led with Linda grew. We had to split into 2 groups to accommodate everyone. We helped dozens of people navigate the process of reporting financial abuse, recovering stolen funds, and healing from the trauma of family betrayal. Some of them pressed charges. Some of them did not, and I did not judge them for that choice. Everyone's situation was different. Everyone's healing looked different. Helen remained my closest friend, my anchor. We traveled together, took a trip to the coast, spent a week in Seattle visiting museums and eating good food. She helped me see that my life was not over, that I could still have joy, still have adventures, still have purpose. 2 years after Bradley's sentencing, I received notification that Courtney's mother had passed away. Linda had been battling cancer, something she had not told me about. She had asked that I speak at her funeral. I did, honoring her courage in joining our support group, in helping other victims find their voices. Her other children were there, the siblings Courtney had cut off when they questioned her behavior. They thanked me for being Linda's friend in her final months. At the funeral, I learned something that shocked me. Linda had left a substantial portion of her estate to the nonprofit that fought elder abuse, specifically requesting it fund support groups and legal assistance for victims of family financial abuse. She had taken her pain and transformed it into something that would help others long after she was gone. I vowed to do the same. 3 years after the sentencing, Bradley became eligible for a reduced sentence due to good behavior and the substantial work he had done in prison. His sentence was reduced by 2 years. He would be released in 7 more years instead of 9. Part of me was angry about that. Part of me thought he deserved every single day of the original sentence. But another part of me, A part that had grown through the work of healing, understood that people could change. Not everyone did. Maybe most people did not. But some did. And if Bradley was genuinely working to become a better person, if he was using his time in prison to actually transform himself, then maybe there was hope for him. Not hope that we would have a close relationship again. That ship had sailed. But hope that he would not hurt anyone else, that he would spend the rest of his life trying to make amends. I continued to visit him once a year. Our conversations were always difficult, always honest. He told me about the restorative justice program he had joined in prison, where he had to face the impact of his crimes, had to write letters to his victims explaining what he had done and why. Several victims had responded. Some told him they forgave him. Some told him they never would. Both responses were valid. Bradley told me he had reached out to Courtney's siblings, apologizing for his role in their estrangement from their sister. He told me he was working to pay restitution, not just because he was legally required to, but because he wanted to make things as right as he possibly could. "I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me," he said during one visit. "I don't know if I would, if I were you. But I want you to know that I'm grateful you stopped me. I'm grateful you held me accountable. It's the only way I could have ever faced what I had become." Time passed. I turned 70. Helen threw me a birthday party. The support group presented me with a plaque thanking me for my leadership. My condo was paid off. My savings were secure, locked in accounts with multiple layers of security. I had a will, a financial advisor, and a power of attorney designated to a trusted attorney, not to family. I had learned to protect myself without becoming cynical, to trust without being naive. I wrote a book. It was not a bestseller, but it sold steadily. It was published by a small press that specialized in memoirs about overcoming trauma. People wrote to me from all over the country, sharing their stories, thanking me for giving them permission to speak up, to fight back, to refuse to be victims. One letter in particular moved me. It was from a woman in Florida whose son had been stealing from her. She had read my book and filed a police report. Her son was prosecuted. She said it was the hardest thing she had ever done, but also the most empowering. She said I had saved her life. I cried when I read that letter. If all the pain I had been through could save even one person, then it meant something. Now, at 72, I sit on my balcony in Bend, watching the sun set over the mountains that have become my home. Helen is beside me. We are planning a trip to Italy next spring, something we have always wanted to do. I am financially secure. I have friends. I have purpose. I have peace. I think about Bradley sometimes. He will be released in 4 more years. He writes to me monthly. His letters are different now, more mature, more reflective. He tells me about the counseling certification he is working toward, about his plans to work with at-risk youth when he gets out. He tells me he understands if I do not want to see him when he is released, that he has forfeited the right to be my son in any meaningful way. I do not know what I will do when that day comes. Maybe I will see him, maybe I will not. I am learning to be okay with uncertainty, with not having all the answers, with letting the future unfold as it will. What I do know is this. I learned that being a good mother does not mean sacrificing your dignity. It means teaching your children, even adult children, that actions have consequences. It means loving them enough to let them face those consequences rather than shielding them from reality. I learned that strength is not about never feeling pain. Strength is about feeling the pain fully and then choosing to move forward anyway. I learned that forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. I can forgive Bradley for what he did without allowing him back into my life in the same way. Forgiveness is about releasing the poison of bitterness so it does not consume me. Reconciliation is about trust, and trust must be earned slowly over time through consistent, changed behavior. Most importantly, I learned that my value as a person is not determined by whether my child loves me or treats me well. I spent so many years defining myself through Bradley, measuring my worth by his success, his happiness, his approval. When he betrayed me, I felt like I had lost everything. But slowly, painfully, I discovered that I am whole on my own. I am enough on my own. If you are facing something similar, if someone you love is hurting you, stealing from you, abusing you, please know this: it is not your fault. You did not cause it. You do not deserve it. And you have the right to protect yourself, even if that means walking away from someone you love, even if that means pressing charges, even if that means people judge you or think you are being harsh. Your life matters. Your well-being matters. Your safety and security matter. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting a boundary and holding it, no matter how much it hurts. Sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no. Sometimes the greatest act of love is demanding that people treat you with the respect and dignity you deserve, and enforcing real consequences when they do not. I look at the sunset, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink and gold, and I feel grateful, not for what happened. I would not wish that pain on anyone, but I am grateful for who I have become through it. I am stronger. I am wiser. I am more compassionate toward others who suffer. I am more careful with my trust, but not closed off to connection. I have found my voice, my power, my purpose, and I am using it to help others find theirs. Helen squeezes my hand. "What are you thinking about?" she asks. "Everything," I say. "Nothing, the future." She smiles. "The future is going to be good, Dusty. You've earned it." She is right. I have earned it. Through pain, through loss, through the hardest choice I ever made, I have earned this peace, and I am not letting anyone take it from me ever again. If my story has touched you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Have you or someone you know faced betrayal from a family member? How did you find the strength to move forward? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel for more stories of resilience and hope, and sharing it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Together, we can break the silence around elder abuse and family betrayal. Together, we can help others find their voices and their power. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I wish you courage, healing, and the strength to always stand up for yourself, no matter what. You deserve nothing less.